Welcome back to another Mobalytics video, and it's another patch week, which means we're here to cover the best champions for every single role in this patch. There are some new faces and some obvious returning ones too, as this was not as big of a patch as some of the previous ones this season. So let's not keep you waiting any longer and dive straight into the top lane. Now before we show you our top 3, we just want to mention Quinn. She's popping off at the moment, and the only reason she didn't make this list is because of a much lower play rate than the rest. But don't forget about this champion, as she's super hot this patch. Riven is still one of the best champions in the game at the moment. She's been absurd since the fighter itemization changes back in 12.3. She was already performing well, and these seem to really cement her place in that top spot. And as far as we're concerned, based on overall stats, win rate and performance from gold all the way through to challenger, and she really is the bee's knees right now. Riven just has so many strengths and qualities as to why she's so good. She is great throughout all stages of the game. She's got high damage, survivability, mobility, itemized sustain, and she can really abuse the ability haste meta with no resource restriction. A Gore Drinker Death Dance Riven is terrifying to play against, and there are plenty of other abusers of this item combo, but Riven seems to be the best of the bunch. Riven is always going to be a champion that has some bad matchups though, so you still need to be careful blind picking her, especially as you get higher up in those ranks. This champion really is based on the pilot behind her, and if you know what you're doing, there is almost always a chance for you to carry in every single game. Tryndamere is the next one, and he's still just obnoxious as ever, and he's winning a stupid amount of games. Tryndamere has also benefited from the majority of changes we've seen in Season 12 so far. The teleport changes that came in also allowed him to dominate lanes more often, without any chance of his opponent having more impact on the rest of the map. The fighter item changes made everyone he lanes against have less health, which is great for Tryndamere as he just crits everyone to death. None of his major bad matchups or enemies have really been buffed either, which means he's just super strong all round. So to top all of that off, enchanting support and Tryndamere equals good game well played. If you're a Tryndamere main, I'm sure you enjoy a Lulu behind you buffing you up with her abilities and her Ardent Sensor. Overall, this champion has been strong for quite some time, and everything that's happening this season so far is only making him even happier. Tryndamere carries the same strengths that he's always had of stomping lanes, diving turrets, split pushing into oblivion and carrying games on his own. Shen has slowly risen back up over the last few weeks, and he's sitting at a very comfortable win rate again at the moment. He lost a bit of popularity after his Q nerf back in 12.2, but now he's made a pretty solid comeback. Shen, like Tryndamere, will always have a place on the Rift due to his strengths and his playstyle effectiveness. Shen's ability to split push and then ultimate across the map make him so easy to be impactful on, and all you gotta do to get into a team fight is land a big taunt and auto attack your enemies to death. Shen also snowballs surprisingly well and becomes a real threat as a 1v1 duelist too, which is pretty scary when combined with his ability to influence the map in an instant with his ultimate. Shen has always been one of those champions that can always pop off in any kind of game. 1 minute he's behind in lane and trying to catch up, and the next minute he's teleporting bot, securing 3 kills and getting a dragon, all before teleporting back up to top lane just in time to catch the minion wave. If you don't punish Shen when he ults, he can easily carry games, and that really shows in his current win rate so far this patch. Moving on to the jungle now, and for a change we're not going to talk about Diana, Hecarim or Viego. These champions are still 3 of the best junglers in the game this patch, but we've decided you should know plenty about them already. Instead, we're going to talk about some other choices and explain why they are also fantastic options. Now, we were going to talk about Master Yi here, as he was absolutely ridiculous after this patch. However, he's now been nerfed in the hotfix, and as a result, he's fallen down a monumental amount and actually has one of the worst win rates in the game. It's likely he will get a bit of a compensation buff, but for now, he's just not the greatest choice. Instead of Master Yi, we're going to include Zac. Zac has been having a fantastic time recently, and if you watch our tier list videos, you'll know already that we've rated him very highly this patch. Zac is just in a brilliant spot right now. He boasts a huge amount of tankiness, CC and even damage. Zac's long range engage is arguably one of the best in the game, and this allows him to repeatedly dive into backlines and completely ruin his enemy's day. This means he's a great answer to all of those long range hyper carries, squishy mages and enchanting sustaining supports. Zac is fairly strong at all points in the game now too, and is far less prone to those early invades where he really used to struggle beforehand. Zac's early ganks and counter ganks are lethal, and this translates into a mid game where he is so tanky and impossible to shut down, whilst also dealing a sizable amount of damage too. Zac also works into pretty much any team composition and doesn't have a great deal of bad matchups, which makes him one of the best junglers to go for in patch 12.5. The next champion is a champion that hasn't received any attention for a while, but does seem to pop in and out of the meta fairly often, and that's going to be Trundle. Now when this champion is strong, he is really strong. Trundle's main strength is his dueling and his 1v1 potential from as early as level 1, and there's genuinely almost no other champion in the entire game that can rival him. This allows Trundle to live in the enemy jungle, and if anyone does try and come and fight him, he'll just kill them whilst taking all of their camps. If you're playing Trundle, make sure you're abusing this, and if you're playing against him, make sure you set up for a vertical jungle and get those early deep wards ready. Trundle has always been a champion who's prone to kiting. but with so many utility mages and enchanting supports who can buff his movement speed, this makes it far more tolerable. Don't forget about Trundle's ultimate too, as this is going to make tanks squishy as anything. His win rate really is bonkers at the moment, and if you're interested in seeing some more stats and win rates, don't forget we have them all on our website and our desktop app, so click the link in the description and check those out. The final jungler on this list is going to be Kha'Zix. Now we mentioned Kha'Zix in this video for the last patch, and we said he's going to be the one to watch. Well, it seems like we were right in this one in thinking this guy will be making a big comeback. Kha'Zix has been massively overshadowed and somewhat forgotten about so far this season, especially when compared to his popularity in Season 11 and in pre-Season 12. Well, he is truly back with a vengeance, and he's sitting comfortably at nearly 53% win rate in Plat Plus at the time of making this video. Kha'Zix is another champion who has always been excellent at the same things. He finds flanks, he isolates targets, and he removes them from the game before they can even react. Kha'Zix's single target burst is simply unmatched, and it's a bit tilting when you can't or don't even see him coming and then your screen is grey again. This champion is not only very strong in solo queue, but he's also a lot of fun to play. He absolutely destroys objectives with his Q, and he has a fairly creative playstyle depending on which abilities you prefer to evolve. I've always been a bit of a sucker for that evolved E, as those double jumps are just so fun to play with. Anyway, everyone knows what Kha'Zix is capable of, so don't hesitate to pick him up again and have fun carrying those games with him. Onto the mid lane now, and guess what? We're going to talk about Ahri again. Yep, Ahri is still the main pick to go for in the mid lane at the moment, and she's just dominating the majority of games. She has the highest pick rate and one of the highest win rates for any mid laner so far this season, ever since her mini rework. Now she did receive some nerfs this patch which have made a slight difference of course, but they don't take anything away from the potency of this champion and her new strong playstyle based around those ultimate resets. Ahri now excels in all stages of the game, and she's capable of killing you in the early game, carrying teamfights in the mid game, or making picks in the late game. Either way, Ahri is just a very solid pick overall, and you'd be stupid not to abuse it at the moment. The most common way of playing Ahri in high elo is based around Everfrost. This just makes her EQ impossible to miss, and it makes her even more punishing to play against. It also increases the effectiveness of her ganks and roams, which is a large part of playing mid lane so far in Season 12. The next mid lane pick is Qiyana. Assassins really do still have their place in the meta this season, despite all of the hype around control and utility mages in pre-season and at the start of the season too. Qiyana is definitely one of the best of the lot though. She just has so much sheer damage, and her slippery kit and high skill ceiling allow her to constantly defy the odds and outplay basically anyone. Qiyana is a champion you never really know how it's going to go against. You could go against someone with less experience who doesn't really know how to play her properly, or you could go against a very aggressive Qiyana one trick, and you're really going to see how strong she is if that's the case. Qiyana has received several nerfs over the last few months, and this has made a little bit of a difference, but it hasn't stopped her from repeatedly one-shotting her opponents, snowballing games, and carrying them on her own. Imagine how OP she would have been if people realised how strong she was before that long string of minor nerfs. The third and final mid lane pick of the day is going to be another assassin, and that's one that shares some similar strengths to Qiyana, Fizz. The Fish is another snowballing one-shotting powerhouse that is also incredibly hard to shut down. The mobility on his E and his Q make him so unpredictable and actually really hard to punish for the aggressive plays that he consistently does. Fizz has a ton of kill threat every single time his ultimate is up, meaning he can easily punish those immobile mages by forcing their flash and then sending that fish again when it's back up. Fizz is another mid laner who has a really good ability to roam and carry games, and this just adds even more reason as to why his win rate is just so high right now. It's also quite hilarious how quickly you can actually kill enchanters and squishies with this champion, with genuinely just one ability. In the late game, if you're a bit fed and you see a Nami, your Q is often enough to one-shot her. How's that for some seafood supremacy? Onto the bot lane now, and the same few names and faces are still walking all over the rest of the bot lane scene at the minute. Jhin and Jinx have been spoken about in almost every single one of these videos since the start of this season, so we aren't going to cover those today despite them still being some of the best choices. The first AD carry to get the spot today is Zeri. Ever since her release, she's been an incredibly unstable champion, and it seems Riot are having a very difficult time balancing her. Zeri's strengths lie mainly in her mobility and her movement speed alongside her relentless and constant DPS. She is still thriving with the Triforce, Titanic Hydra and Runaan's Hurricane setup, and this just makes her AoE damage and cleave unbelievable. Riot have said they still aren't happy with this champion's crazy win rate, and are in plans of talking of figuring out how to actually nerf her accordingly. Zeri is still easily one of the most broken champions in the game, so you're going to have to be quick if you want to play her before she gets nerfed, again. The next AD carry for this list is not actually an AD carry, it's Veigar. Veigar has had a fantastic season so far, and we very nearly included him in the mid lane. The only reason we didn't is because he was also performing so well as a mage option in the bot lane. Veigar has incredible scaling, which is great when you park him in that bot lane, and allow him to farm under the protection of a good support. Veigar also has amazing AoE damage, single target burst, AoE crowd control, pick potential, wave clear, and yeah, he just ticks a hell of a lot of boxes. You can pair him with a CC heavy support and chase kills, or you can pick an enchanter and help him scale and keep him alive. If you do manage to get to the mid to late game with a little bit of farm, you're probably going to carry the game. Veigar is just such a great option if you've got a bit of a heavy AD comp and need some magic damage from that bottom lane. He's performing incredibly well across all ranks at the moment, so make sure you aren't missing out and give him a go. The last AD carry we've got to mention today is going to have to be Vane. Vane is another marksman that's been really strong since pre-season and has remained in a very healthy position ever since. She did get impacted a little bit after a few nerfs and the nerfs to her itemization though, as before Shieldboat and Wit's End were nerfed, she was arguably the best champion in the game. Since then, Jhin and Jinx have kind of been a little bit ahead of her. However, recently over the last few weeks, she's got herself back in that top spot. Vayne's win rate is higher than almost all AD carries across all ranks, meaning she has undeniably risen back up into that top position. The only ADC that you could say is a bit stronger than her right now is Zeri, and those reasons are pretty obvious. So why has Vayne risen back up to the top spot? Well, for a start, Vayne really struggled when the meta was full of long-range mages, and those have really calmed down a lot. We're seeing the return of assassins and the usual culprits in the mid lane, and Vayne has a lot more tools to deal with those than other AD carries. She's got the mobility from Tumble and the self-peel from her Stealth and her Condemn. Tanks are also a bit more common now, and we all know how easy it is for Vayne to kill tanks. Her damage has never really been in question either. It's remained stupidly high for a very long time, and those silver bolts just pierce through anyone. The Enchanter meta still really does benefit this champion too, and there's no AD carry in the game that can out-duel her in a 1v1 if she plays it correctly. Finally, let's move on to supports, and in the first spot we've got Senna. She is having an amazing time this season, ever since she rose to popularity after a few minor buffs. Senna was originally being played as an AD carry, and Riot went nope, back to the support you go, and now she's fully pledged to that support role. Senna is one of the most unique supports in the game, as she just brings so much damage. You can also pair her with basically anyone you want in that bot lane and allow them to farm whilst you continue to scale up like an AD carry anyway due to your souls. The damage and range you get from your souls is just madness, and late game Senna is pretty terrifying. Senna's itemization is also really flexible. You've got high damage options like lethality, you've got Kraken Slayer, or you can even go down the Enchanter route which has come up recently. This consists of Locket of the Iron Solari and Redemption, making you far tankier and empowering your healing. Whichever route you go down and whichever champion you pick it with, Senna is an exceptional pick this patch. The next support choice is Soraka, and again another champion who's been having a fantastic time so far this season. Soraka truly is the GOAT of all GOATs. There is something so satisfying about killing your enemies with bananas, and that's enough reason to pick her already. She really is the true queen of sustain and doesn't really offer anything else aside from her healing, but it's just so damn good that it makes this champion more than capable of carrying games. Soraka is so hard to play against, and even if your whole team buys anti-heal, it can still feel like they're impossible to kill, especially now that Soraka's ultimate cleanses that debuff. Adding Soraka to a team full of sustained champions like those who can abuse their stance also make her far more difficult to beat. She works into basically all team compositions and basically any AD carry that you fancy. If you're playing AD carry with a Soraka support though, don't be afraid to get stuck in and abuse just how aggressive you can play in lane, and then walk back to your turret and get healed back up to full. Okay guys, the last champion for this list is going to have to be Janna. She has just been everywhere since her mini rework, and she's not going anywhere anytime soon. Janna really is the best disengaged support you can go for at the moment, and she's now equally as good at setting up plays as she is from denying them. Her ultimate heal feels so much better now, and it's actually being used for sustain rather than just its knockback. Much like Soraka, Janna is someone you can pick with pretty much anyone in the bot lane. She has so many things to offer, and a good Janna can basically win lane on her own. After the lane phase, Janna only gets stronger, and arguably has one of the best mid games for any support at the moment. Shields, heals and crowd control are everything that you want from a support in this season, and she offers all of those things and then some. Janna is a heavily prioritised and contested pick so far this season, and we think she's going to continue to perform as long as nothing too significant changes. Well, that's going to conclude our list of the best champions to play for every role in Season 12 patch 12.5. We hope you agree with our choices, so here is a brief summary of those picks to finish off this video. That's all from us here at Mobalytics, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.